Do you really have control over your thoughts and decisions? Have you ever stopped to think about whether you truly have control over your thoughts and decisions? What if I told you that most of the choices you make every day have already been determined by your subconscious before you even realize it? This happens because the brain operates on two levels: the conscious mind, which actively processes information, and the subconscious, which stores memories, patterns, and conditioning, shaping your perception of reality without you noticing. Neuroscience research reveals that up to 95% of what we do is influenced by subconscious processes. This affects our reactions, beliefs, and even how we interpret the world. But what if it were possible to reprogram the subconscious to transform your life? Today, we'll explore how the brain constructs perceptions and memories, as well as the power of neuroplasticity to modify automatic patterns. Get ready for a fascinating journey into the human mind. Our brain does not process reality objectively. Instead, it filters information based on past experiences, emotions, and unconscious patterns. This mechanism allows us to react quickly to the world, but it also makes us vulnerable to cognitive biases that distort our perception without us realizing it. A classic example is the invisible gorilla experiment, where participants are instructed to count how many passes a basketball team makes. In the middle of the scene, a person in a gorilla suit walks across the screen. Surprisingly, most people do not notice it. This happens because the brain prioritizes what it expects to see, ignoring unexpected information. Another fascinating study is the door study, where a person asks a pedestrian for directions. In the middle of the conversation, two men carrying a door pass between them, and the person asking the question is replaced by someone else. Half of the participants do not notice the switch, revealing how much our perception is guided by the subconscious. This phenomenon occurs because the brain conserves energy by filling in gaps based on familiar patterns. Our unconscious mind takes control, leading us to rely on pre-existing memories and beliefs. This explains why we interpret situations subjectively and often make decisions based on emotions and past experiences. Furthermore, our perception of time and space is also shaped by the subconscious. Have you ever noticed how time seems to pass faster when you're busy, or how certain places evoke specific emotions? This happens because the brain processes stimuli selectively, reinforcing associations that have already been recorded. These discoveries raise an essential question: if the subconscious influences our perception so much, can it also be trained to see new possibilities? If our perception of the world is influenced by the subconscious, the same applies to our memories. We often think of memories as fixed files stored in the brain, but the reality is quite different. Every time we access a memory, our brain reconstructs it, potentially altering it without us realizing it. This means that our memories are not just records of the past but narratives in constant evolution. Neuroscientist Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated this in her famous experiment on false memories. She showed that it is possible to implant memories of events that never happened just by suggesting distorted information. In one study, participants were exposed to fictional stories of childhood events, such as getting lost in a shopping mall. Surprisingly, many began to remember these non-existent moments, reinforcing the idea that memory is malleable and highly influenced by external factors. What does this mean in practice? Our memories are not always reliable. They are modified by the emotional state at the time they are recalled and by the information we absorb later. Traumas, for example, are reinforced by intense emotions, making the associated memories even more vivid and difficult to alter. This also explains why people who experience repeated stress develop unconscious patterns of fear or self-protection. The brain creates strong associations between certain triggers and negative emotions, making it difficult to break cycles of anxiety, phobias, or limiting beliefs. On the other hand, this same characteristic of the mind can be used to reframe memories and reprogram the subconscious. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, leverage this plasticity of memory to modify negative patterns, helping patients reinterpret traumatic memories and build healthier internal narratives. If memory is not a fixed record but a dynamic process, an important question arises: if we can alter it, can we also train the subconscious to create new neural connections and transform our way of thinking? If our memories can be modified, then the way our brain functions can also be altered. This phenomenon is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to create and reorganize neural connections throughout life. For a long time, scientists believed that the brain was fixed after childhood, but recent research has shown that it continues to reshape itself based on our experiences, thoughts, and habits. This means that unconscious patterns, such as limiting beliefs and automatic reactions, are not permanent. Just like a muscle, the brain can be trained to develop new neural pathways, changing how it processes information and responds to stimuli. But how does this happen? The answer lies in repetition and emotion. When an action or thought is repeated, the brain strengthens the connections associated with it. If a pattern is maintained long enough, it becomes automatic and is managed by the subconscious. This is how habits are formed, both positive and negative. Studies show that even imagination can strengthen neural connections. In one experiment, scientists divided volunteers into two groups. One physically practiced the piano, while the other only imagined playing the keys. After a few weeks, brain scans revealed that both groups had developed the same neurological changes, proving that the brain responds similarly to real and mental experiences. This brings us to a crucial question: if the subconscious absorbs repetitive patterns, can we use it to reprogram our beliefs and behaviors? The answer is yes. Techniques like visualization, self-affirmation, and meditation can rewire the brain, helping to reinforce new neural pathways and change deeply ingrained patterns. Another example comes from brain reprocessing therapy, used in trauma treatment. This method uses specific stimuli to help the brain reinterpret past events, reducing their negative emotional charge. Over time, these new interpretations become dominant and replace old patterns, proving that the subconscious can be trained to work in our favor. If we can modify unconscious patterns through neuroplasticity, an even more interesting question arises: how can we apply this knowledge and practice to transform our lives? How can we train the subconscious? If the subconscious can be reprogrammed, how do we put this into practice? Science has already shown that cognitive changes occur when we apply techniques that reinforce new neural patterns. This means that, with the right training, we can modify our perception, habits, and even limiting beliefs. One of the most effective approaches is journaling or reflective writing. Studies show that structuring thoughts in writing helps the brain reorganize emotions and reframe experiences, making it possible to break negative patterns. Writing down challenges and rewriting internal narratives strengthens new neural connections, allowing the subconscious to adopt a new interpretation of events. Another powerful technique is visualization. As demonstrated in the studies on mental piano practice, the brain does not distinguish between a real experience and an intensely imagined one. By visualizing a goal repeatedly, we activate brain areas responsible for planning and execution, making this goal more accessible to the subconscious. This explains why elite athletes and top executives use visualization to enhance their skills. Self-affirmations also play an important role. Phrases like, "I am capable," or, "I have control over my decisions," may seem simple, but when repeated with conviction, they reinforce neural circuits associated with self-confidence. Over time, these thoughts become automatic, influencing emotions and behaviors. For deeper changes, exposure therapy has been widely studied in neuroscience. People with phobias or trauma can reprogram their emotional responses by gradually facing feared stimuli. This process strengthens new neural networks, reducing automatic fear and anxiety responses. Finally, the subconscious can also be trained through meditation and mindfulness. Research indicates that regular practice of these techniques enhances connectivity between brain areas associated with emotional regulation and decision-making, allowing unconscious patterns to be consciously modified. What habits will you start today? If all these techniques are scientifically proven, one final question remains: what daily habits can you start practicing now to train your subconscious and rewrite your own story? The subconscious silently shapes our perceptions, memories, and behaviors, but neuroscience shows that it is not a fixed and unchangeable system. Brain plasticity proves that we can reprogram our mental patterns, creating new neural connections to overcome limiting beliefs, develop healthy habits, and enhance how we perceive the world. So, the question is not if we can change, but how we choose to train our subconscious. Small daily practices, like visualization, journaling, and mindfulness, can gradually transform the way we think and react. With time and consistency, what once seemed like an obstacle can become a new mental pathway, guiding our decisions more consciously. Now, I ask you, if the brain is constantly adapting, what will you do with this knowledge? You can continue letting the subconscious operate on autopilot, or you can take control of your mind and start reprogramming it in your favor. Speech Balloon, share in the comments, which of these techniques have you tried or plan to test? And if you want to learn more about how the subconscious influences your emotions and resilience, don't miss the next video.